So, welcome to another episode.
Hello? Can you hear me? I can hear you. I
Let me at least
Go
get
ahead. No,
through
you
the intro.
no, you go ahead.
Let me at
What?
least, let me just
When we
at
talk
least
at the
say,
same time, it's very okay. It's through the internet, so okay, I'm ready. I'll be quiet.
so welcome to another episode of I Mustache You Something. I've got my good friend from high school, Jesse Neuman.
Hi.
Um, and Jesse has not been prepped at all. We haven't pre-discussed anything. He would literally not let me get in a word edgewise, as you heard in the last couple minutes here
Don't.
getting started.
I think anything I have to say is so much more important than anything you have to say. I just don't think it's fair to your audience to cut my audio out, and I know there's only, it's very expensive. This Zoom time is very expensive, so we only have a limited amount of time. So I think it's better if I just do most of the talking.
So, what do you think this is about? Now that we're here and we're recording, why are we talking?
We're talking because you and I have a shared past. We met at a critical point in our lives. We met when we were both in seventh grade. Is that right? Seventh grade. Also known as the worst time to be a boy ever. Probably a girl too. But it is just, there's no worse time to be a boy.
Right.
Nothing works. Everything's growing. There's body things happening. You feel like you're under surveillance. Everybody's look. It's a crucible of uncomfortability and anxiety and sickness. Really, I feel like that was just sick all the time. And we met at this time, and so our friendship is forged in the awful embarrassment and self-consciousness and doubting years of middle school, and somehow we both made it through. And so I imagine we're going to talk about the shared qualities of resilience and, in my case, heroicism. um, I mean, I don't know. You're a doctor. I guess you help people, but I really help people. So I don't know, but well, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm excited to talk about something with you because
I mean, I think
you're a
you're
great
actually
guy and I love you.
I think you're actually spot on because, I was going to share with you and kind of prep you that like a lot of the people that are probably going to be listening to this are going to be um, Coptic people, like Egyptian Christians. And I think that,
To whom I say, l'chaim and mazel tov. That's a, I believe that's a Coptic phrase. I
yeah,
believe
absolutely,
mazel tov.
absolutely. Um,
Buenos dias to my.
it's like that scene from uh, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. We're like, oh, I had a secretary. I think she was Greek. Wasn't she Greek? Like Guatemala.
There it is. All right.
Oh, uh, so I think you know a lot of the people that I'm talking to are Egyptian, but I think that um, a lot of us don't know what that means to be Egyptian American, and a lot of people don't really. This is not like you know people that aren't Coptic. Like no, people that are Coptic don't know what it means to be Coptic. So
Right.
I thought it would be interesting to get your perspective as someone who
Do you want me
uh,
to tell them what it's like to be Coptic? I could
I
explain that
mean,
to them.
like, what was your um, impression of like you were like, oh, like you don't look Jewish, so what are you?
Well, what was my impression of you as a
Well,
non?
like I think my your impression of me personally as this like
It was very poor.
awkward, like
It was
you
very
know,
low. It was very.
yeah.
I had a very poor impression of you. I could
There's
tell.
no redeeming qualities to whatever I had going in seventh grade.
Um. So
But
where
what did that mean to you that like you said like oh like you're not because our middle school high school was like 70 something percent Jewish,
Sure,
so
more probably.
probably more, right? So the people who weren't Jewish were kind of like oh like what does that mean that you're not Jewish? Like, oh, Christian. Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Right.
But Egyptian Christian, like what is that? So
Right.
how did that come across to you?
Well, yeah, our neighborhood was very upper middle class, at least 75% Jewish, if not more. And I mean, I would venture to guess like 95% white, like 95%, yeah, not people of color.
Oh, easy.
Yeah, so, I think in a, and you can steer me if I'm going in the down the wrong rabbit hole, but many of the conversations we have now around diversity and people of color um, start from this place of otherness, right? And we think like, well, we learn American history and then we learn Hispanic Heritage Month because it's something else. Like we go back to regular history, which is white history, or we might learn about, like, gay rights. Then we get back to regular rights, which are the rights of everybody, So the normal people, the typical people. So, I think for me, I very much grew up in an area where, like many people who are dealing with identity and bias and race and all that stuff, trying to sort that stuff out now, I grew up thinking that I was like the regular kind of person and that anyone who looked different was that other kind of person. So like I had a Chinese friend, he was a Chinese guy. I was aware that there were Koreans, which was like kind of like Chinese, but not exactly the same. And there was that. And then there were Indian kids who were not the same as Native Americans Indians that were like Indian, like from India. And like all Indian and sort of brownish people were like in that category. And then there were black people, which we had hardly, I think there was one black kid. And I was like, oh, what is that? And they were like, no, I'm out of here. So as far as being Jewish, I was kind of like, like we have Jewish American history. And so like then when that happened, I think like, oh, so like I guess Jewish is like that's a specific thing, not just part of being white. I think for me, because Judaism is something that you don't, first of all, I'm not all that observant, but even as a mildly observant Jew, Mazel tov, um, uh, Judaism is not something you see on the surface, So like when you see a black person or a person of color or a brown person or an Asian person, they wear that literally on their face so that they don't have the liberty of hiding that. So for me, being Jewish was like, that was a part, but because we were so in such a Jewish community, it didn't stick out. And even in places like later on when it would come up and they said like, oh, you're Jewish? And I was like, yeah, it was like, oh, a novelty or an other, but then I was very quickly like back feeling comfortable in my own white skin. As far as you, I don't know what you were. You were bizarre. You were totally sad and hopeless. I felt so terrible. You were like this little sack of like eagerness and just destined for failure. You were like, I don't know, you're taller than me now, but you were like way below average height. It was like, what? Hello? So you had big glasses, and this was when glasses weren't cool. Um, I, I don't know. I think that I probably just lumped you in. You had a mustache though, which was amazing. In seventh grade, you had a thick, bushy, thick mustache, and we thought no, you didn't.
No, I didn't go through puberty until college. Like,
You didn't go through puberty. I'm still waiting for puberty. Um, I think that to get back to your original question, 10 minutes in, I think I probably assumed you were Indian, and when Indian was like, like
like a color. It was
guys. Yeah, it was
Indian.
a color. They were like guys that wore turbans. I was like, oh, that's an Indian thing, but they're dudes, and they might have long hair, but it's hard to tell. And I think I probably assumed you were Indian, and then when I heard that you were Egyptian, when we got to talking, you didn't have an accent. You spoke and acted like any other typical kid that I would have considered American. So I realized that you'd grown up here, or you'd grown up around like people who spoke English without an accent, and so I was like, oh, Egyptian, like I know where that is because I have relatives in Israel, and so I think then I thought, oh, so you're not Jewish. And I probably, it's hard to think back then, I probably like asked if you were Arab because I think I assumed I'm still like painfully not totally clear on what Arab and Arabic, like I know there are people that speak Arabic but they're not necessarily Arab, or but I think I probably asked about that and you were like, no, I'm Christian. And I was like, okay, but that I understood because I knew that there were Koreans that went to church. I knew there were other people that weren't necessarily white people that went to church. So I don't know. I mean, I think I saw you as, I think if I had to rank the order of identities that in my my experienced brilliant adolescent mind, I probably saw you as like a doofus first, um, like brown skinned, which I like got, which I understood, and then as Christian was like, okay, well that makes sense. I know what that is. And then after that, I think we probably just started to become friends and talk more as people. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that
Oh, sorry. I'd add one more thing. I didn't know that you were Orthodox. I don't think I knew that you were Orthodox or Coptic until much later. Because
yeah,
when you said that's another level, which I don't know if you want to talk about, but when you say Christian, I just think like, oh, like
yeah.
Santa Claus and guilt. So like that's what I think of.
Listen, you guys are doing just fine with the guilt yourselves, by the way.
Oh, no,
Jewish guilt, Coptic guilt, Catholic guilt, like
we're
everybody.
brothers from another mother. I'm telling you, we understand guilt. So the Coptic part didn't come later, but I think that's what I saw you as, like kind of like a geeky kid,
Doofus.
goofus, brown skinned. I know what that is, and then Christian, that makes sense. Yeah.
You reminded me actually of a funny, not really funny at the time, like funny in retrospect.
Hmm.
Um, that I don't know if I should mention the name, but like one of the people that you would definitely recognize the name from middle school and high school. Every time I would walk into the room, he'd say, "When Mina was in Egypt land,
Right.
my people go." And
Right.
I'd be like, so and so, it doesn't make any sense because I'm not Moses.
Right.
Moses would do it. And like,
Right. Right.
it annoyed me that he was teasing me. It
Yeah.
annoyed me that he was like teasing like the fact that I was Egyptian, but it really, really burned me that like the logic of it just
That he
didn't.
got it wrong.
Yeah, and I'm
Right.
like,
You're like, if you're gonna be funny, at least be accurate.
yeah, I'm like,
Well,
there's nothing witty about that.
Well, and this goes back to like when we started, but kids are so dumb. Kids are so dumb, and they're so cruel, and they're so like. I remember we probably talked about this, but I remember that in middle school, the thing was to just not care about anything. That was the thing. The thing was to just whatever anything. If you showed any interest at all in anything, you were a whatever, insert that thing, idiot. So it's like, so I was interested in music, like, oh, band geek, band idiot, blah blah blah, but like that. And I think obviously so much of it is just the lack of self confidence in middle school kids and kids that age, and this like very inherently human need to categorize things to understand them, right? And I've been reading and talking a lot about this, that like that's really a very useful trait to categorize things. It's just that like it's sort of spun a little bit out of control for us because it's been like squeezed through the ringer of politics and of economics and of religion and of all these things, where it becomes like a divisive thing rather than a helpful thing. But I just remember that in middle school, especially, it was just like label, label, boom. Like, so I imagine, I think I even know who you're talking about. Is it SM? Are those the initials? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, and I remember that kid, and he was funny because he did that with everyone. He was like, he nailed he had a thing for everyone. But it's funny when you're in middle school and you're like, oh my God, anything to divert the attention from me. But kids will do that. I mean, I remember like, yeah, and I remember that happening, and I know there were other kids like who would have some like novel quality about them, and it was instantly pegged and whatever. And so, I think that like to your misfortune, you were just such an easy target because you
Oh
were
yeah.
the only Egyptian kid we had.
No,
And
it wasn't even that. Like that wasn't the most prevalent thing. You don't remember like what I was called for 6 years?
no, what were you called for 6 years?
So
I don't remember.
so in seventh grade, what show was I on? This
Oh,
this was the kiss of death. This was like, oh, the new kid that went on Carmen San Diego.
oh, no, I didn't know that one.
You know,
What?
you didn't,
You were on Carmen San Diego?
I like to me, like that was like the bane of my existence that I went on that show and like SM had his song
Right.
and everybody else, every time I walked into a room, they'd be like, where in the world? I should have
Oh,
I should have
see,
never moved here.
I missed that whole thing. I had no idea you were on Carmen San Diego.
Yeah,
Missed that whole thing.
there's a rogue tape floating
Is
around.
there? Can
And
I?
if you want to reminisce about like you remember the hair, the whole thing is on video to be
Yeah.
recorded.
So you were. You came in the first day and you were like, "Hey, guess what? I did something cool," and you told everyone, and then
No, no, no,
you
no,
didn't
no,
even tell
no.
anyone.
No, they came to the school. They came to the school and
Was I
they
out this week? I don't remember any of
like
this.
that's why I'm like we're like did we go to the same school? So
I was in the band room.
yeah. So they gave
Hey, can I
everybody
ask you a question though?
yeah.
But just a point of clarification. So where exactly is Carmen San Diego?
You're lucky
Would
this is being recorded. So they
you
came to
you don't know?
and they gave everybody a test, and everybody that met like a certain threshold on the test, they interviewed us
Yeah.
all in a room together, and
Ah.
they basically had us go around and say like basically what we would say at the beginning of the show. And because I'd lived like different places, like I was born in Egypt and I lived in Puerto Rico and like I lived in Queens and then I moved to Long Island, it was different, like from the
Right.
rest of the room. Like, I play on a
Right.
soccer team and like I like to do
Right.
things with friends.
Right.
So I think that's why they picked me and they announced it on like the loudspeaker. So the whole
Oh my
school knew. They're
God.
like, we have an announcement for who was selected to do Carmen San Diego,
Right.
and it's from the seventh grade, and it's
Right.
Mina. They probably like mispronounced my name. It's probably Mina Mesha.
Our new student, Yasser Arafat. He is brown skinned and small. You've probably noticed him sitting in the corner by himself. He has been awarded some honor that you will doubtless turn into a point of ridicule. That's all. Soccer club meets at 4 o'clock.
Absolutely. So the
Oh,
announcements,
man.
and like everybody just turned and looked at me, and I was like, should have never done this.
I missed the whole thing. I had no idea, but I'm so, so sorry. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. Yeah. But it's
I
amazing, though, how
remember
something.
remember the what's it called, the the captain of the football team that played quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
6 years. Carmen, what's up?
Really?
Nice to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is something that I
Yeah.
think, like, not only were you sort of oblivious to a certain respect, but I always admired how like you were kind of above it. Like they'd call you the band geek, and you'd be like, "Yeah, that's very funny,"
Right.
and like that would be the end of it, right? And I told you this story before. There
That
was a
is a
time when
fact.
what's that?
He'd say band geek. I say that is a fact.
Right.
Yes.
Like absolutely,
Correct.
there's nothing wrong with that. And like
Yeah.
somebody else might be like, no, don't call me that.
Yeah.
Um, but there was one time like this is like burned into my memory. Like I had like I can play this video in my head. We were in the hallway and I was with, one of my geeky friends that that uh I always hung out with and like sat at lunch with and like that like that geek group. And one of the bullies is walking down the hall and out of nowhere for no reason starts pushing my friend and we're both like what are you doing, bro?
Mhm.
And like there was like a good like 6 to 8 inch difference between the two of them, and then you come up and you automatically read the whole situation. You were like, I know what's going on here. This guy just wants attention. And you were like, hey, you said the bully's name. You're like, hey, what's up, man? How are you? And he's like, and then he like, because you like recognized that he was like in existence, he like left my friend alone.
He forgot
And
what he was doing.
we are like me and the friend like looked at each other and like looked at you like how did that work? But you always seem to have like a good sense of the social dynamics on a level that like the rest of us were like lemmings like running down the hallway, and you're like looking like, yes, we will run down the hallway like lemmings, and I will enjoy my adolescence, but I will do so with awareness.
Right, right.
Where did that come from?
Well, I do remember, I remember us talking about this, and I vaguely remember that incident. I appreciate the compliment, and it's nice to know that that worked and it helped. I don't know that I possessed like any like really sophisticated like social awareness or above it allness. Um, but I think that I think I was lucky in some ways, like to be able to navigate some of that stuff. Like it's funny you mentioned that because it sounds like a very brave, kind of like subversive, crafty thing to do. And in the current climate, which we can get into or not, but I feel a little like I wish I were a little braver. Like I wish it still had some more of that. I'm thinking about like ways to assert my beliefs and who and what I think would really be good for us at this moment. And sometimes I wish I was a little more brave, but I don't know. I'm working on it. As far as the middle school, I don't know. I had really good parents. I have really good parents. I was very close with my dad, and who is a psychologist by training. And he's not a weirdo. Like he's not one of these like, tell me how you're feeling about your mustache. Like he's just like a dude. He's a normal guy, and he's just good at his job. And so I think that he never put me on the couch, so to speak. But like we talked a lot, and I remember like just generally from that period. I remember being very hurt and being very upset by a lot of that kind of stuff. And I remember it being stressful, but I also remember being aware that it was like a thing that was not my fault and a thing that was going to pass. So I think maybe when you talk about that higher than, being higher than, or being above, I think you said being above it. Like I think I was sort of above it in like an analytical sense. Like middle school was very embarrassing and difficult, and I was just talking to my wife about how because we both teach middle schoolers, so we deal with middle schoolers, and so talking about how like I used to stand in front of my mirror for like 45 minutes in the morning, like readjusting the same shirt or like putting on a different. It's like all my shirts were the same. There was nothing fancy about, or there was nothing like really different about any one shirt or pair of jeans or sneakers, but somehow I was convinced that I could make it look better and that it didn't look right, and I did that every day. I tried to get my hair to look right. I looked at my glasses and my braces, and it's like I was very aware of all that stuff. I was very aware that kids would call me a band geek, and worse. I was very aware that my friends would be like totally giving me a hard time in the lunchroom, and then someone new would come sit down, and then they would give that person a hard time, and then someone new, like I was aware of all this stuff. It bothered me. It was like embarrassing, but I also knew, I think because of my parents and just because I had sources of self-esteem, that it was like, even though this is totally like crazy sauce, it's not my fault. I didn't make it. There's nothing I need to do to make it stop, and it will go away. So I had a little bit of like a high road view, and it was uncomfortable, but I was able to get through it. And I had plenty of bad moments too. I had moments with bullies, and I had moments where I like sort of wish I'd stood up a little more than I did. And but I remember like by the time I got to high school, I looked around one day and I was like, oh, like that's not a problem anymore. Not because it really changed, just because I don't care anymore. Like now I'm like I found my people, and I was a good student. I was into music and I had friends, and so it was like okay, like I've exited this thing. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I see that you still roll up your sleeves the same way that you used to.
Did I really? Yeah, that's my thing.
That's your thing. And I actually copied you, and I would like, I'm like, okay,
Roll them
like
up now. Do
I'm,
it. Roll them up.
I'm
Roll them
gonna
up.
fit in
Yeah.
because this is what we do. Like
Right.
we're gonna roll up our sleeves, and I'm like, how many turns is that? I
How,
think
how many exactly?
I'm like, how many folds do you do? And you're like,
Yeah. What?
fold it. And there's actually one time where I was on the bus stop and I had like my already not like the right length jeans rolled up,
Uh huh.
and you look down and you're like, you don't have to roll up your jeans, right? I'm like, I thought, I thought
I thought
that's
that was a thing.
that was,
Yeah.
I mean, and you're like, it's okay not to roll them up. It's fine
Right.
for you to just have the jeans down.
Right.
And like, you gave me permission to unroll my jeans, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, because like they really felt short to me,
Right.
and now they seem like a more reasonable length. And I unrolled them, and you're like, good. And
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
How do you
That
feel? How do you feel about that now? Yeah.
I'm like, I feel good. And
Yeah.
like things that like now at like the age we're at now, which we're not going to mention, we're like, what are you talking about? Like, are you crazy?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still remember, and like part of my identity is looking back to that like awkward kid on the bus stop who had zero place anywhere. And at least the kid down the street was like, hey, I like you. You're a good guy.
Right.
You seem like you need a little help.
Right.
Have you considered this?
Right.
Um,
Have you considered not? Have you? Can I curse on this program?
no, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not that. I don't think it's that like
Have you
because
considered not caring about what other people think?
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I'm laughing because I can picture you there, and yeah, I'm glad that it helped. I'm glad you felt that way. I don't think I did it out of any like really heroic sense of decency. Like I think we were friends. Like I don't know, like you were funny and fun, and we lived down the block from each other, and we met up and we became friends. Like it seemed was like a natural thing. And I think when you try to help out your friends, I it's so hard. It's so hard to figure that stuff out, and I see it now from adulthood. I see it in my students, but also like in my friends' kids and other kids I meet, and it's so hard to when someone says to you, "I know you feel really self-conscious now, but it's not going to be like this forever. It's going to pass." It is the hardest thing to understand.
Yeah.
Like I have a history of depression in my family, and so I've been through depressive episodes. And when you go through depression, it's not like being sad. It's like a total loss of hope and perspective. You just feel like there is no reason to continue. It's like even taking your life would be too much work. It's really, really terrible. And it has nothing to do with how positive a person you are. Like, I'm a very happy, positive person, and I was very happy and achieved, and I was very successful. I don't know. I was successful at what I was doing. I had a job, I was doing my thing, I was in relationships, and for a combination of circumstances, some physical, some psychological, some just situational, what was going on. I fell into this depression, and it's like it didn't matter how many people said it's going to be okay, you're going to be okay. It didn't feel like it was going to be okay. Because when your brain turns on you, it's super scary and it's very insular and isolating. And I'm really lucky that I had a lot of support and I had good doctors and I came out of it, and it's something that I deal with and I manage, and I'm fine. But being a teenager is a little like that. It's like that hole you climb into, and it just, you can only see out of your eyes, and you have no experience. You have
Right.
no life experience, because when you're a child, you're a child. You don't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, there's all this crazy stuff going on around you. It's like, we were joking before, but it's like your body is hormonal. You're crying, you're growing hair, things smell, things, you're knocking things over. All of a sudden you're aware of like romantic attractions. I mean, I like, that's a whole, I have a good story about, I could tell you another story about that, but it's like nothing makes sense. And it's just a miracle that you can function at all. Like sometimes I look at these kids in middle school, I'm like, I'm so glad that you're just here. Like even if you do nothing today, I'm proud of you that you made it, because it's like I could barely function. You're just like, you think everyone's looking at you. It's really hard to prioritize and to see past your own self-absorption. And I think teenagers get a bad rap because they say, "Oh, they're so self-absorbed." It's like, yes, they are. They can't help it. Some teenagers become self-absorbed to a point where they're just really out of touch with reality, and they think that if they don't have XYZ designer jeans by yesterday, they're going to be the laughing stock. And that's problematic. And I think it speaks to bad parenting. But there's other stuff that's like, yeah, you're going to be self conscious, and it's really sucks. And when you don't have a lot of friends, or you don't have something that you're good at, or that you feel like you're good at, or you feel different, that can be really debilitating. And I think, not to put words in your mouth, but I mean, you showed up and you didn't know anyone and you looked different, and those are like two pretty big strikes. So it's pretty impressive that like you were able to function at all, and you actually
It
did
didn't really. It didn't really.
well. But you did. But I don't know, I sort of went on a tangent there, but I do feel for teenagers, and I feel less for adults. Like I don't feel quite as bad for adults who are so self-absorbed that they can't deal with other people, because I feel like you had your time to work that out. But I do understand it. But it's hard for kids, and I think that as advocates, in any, if you're an advocate, if through the church, through Boy Scouts, through a team, as a coach, as a teacher, as a parent, as an uncle, whatever, like you have to just remind kids it's okay. It's gonna be okay. Like I try to use humor. Like when things get weird in my classes and the kids are, I say, listen, puberty's tough. Everybody's, I know there's a lot of growth and hormones, and they all get this like look, and I'm like, it's okay. It's gonna, like, but it's like an equalizer. It's like, everybody be quiet, because I know puberty's tough. You have to have compassion and be empathetic, and it's not easy to figure out who you are, but we can do it. People do it, and we can do it, and you don't have to get it right on the first try. There's like lots of ways to be a person. So, and I'm sure this comes up with in your work with the church too. It's not like oh, I saved myself today. I figured it out. I'm on the right path. It's a lot of work. So, I mean, for
Oh,
Jews, it's not work. It's easy for us because we're Jewish, but
right. Yeah.
for
I mean,
everybody, we're
yeah,
chosen. We're the chosen people.
we're out. You're in. No problem. Um, but I think that brings us to like probably later in the episode that I would have expected. But I think this is the time where I mustache you something.
Oh, here it is. Okay. That was just warm up.
That was just warm up.
I wasn't even the question. All
No,
right.
no, that was just us getting to know each other, because we don't go far back enough, so we're just getting to know each other.
Should I stretch
Uh,
or something before you ask me the question? Should I
no, I think you're ready. You like, trust me, you're loose. You're good.
Okay, I'm good. I'm good to go.
But I think with a lot of people that I'm
Okay.
talking, um, and like I told you, like a lot of them are from our community, like Christian, Coptic, Egyptian, and even within us, we don't have like a good sense of, okay, why are some people so locked into a specific idea and other people are going to be able to look past themselves and outside of themselves. And this is a question that kind of keeps coming up with the different conversations that I'm having with people. And I think that you hit on that it's normal for a teenager, but like at some point you need to grow out of that and be able to say, okay, like I need to see things from someone else's perspective. So regardless of whether we're talking about culture or faith or politics or uh, any kind of opinion or any kind of perspective, what how would you frame it for someone that um, you think might not necessarily have grown up, and how would you tell them, like, hey, like how do you help them to crack out of that? Like what's the path there? Because A is this teenager, like I only see it from my
Mhm.
perspective, and B is this work in progress. It's not like, oh, like now we're sort of on the other side and we're always selfless and perfect. No, but like we've at least recognized the need to work outside of our own perspective to try at least to see the perspectives of others. So if you feel like someone is potentially A, how do
Mhm.
you how do you say this is how we nudge you in that direction to be?
Well, that's a great question. I wish I had like a really a good answer because I would take that advice myself. There are a couple things that come to mind. The first thing is that just like the going back to the teenage conversation, I think to just take a step back and say, I am aware that I am not the only person who hasn't figured it out is really helpful. I think that, and I hope I wasn't too callous when I said that line before. But when I say I have trouble dealing with people who are grown up and they still haven't figured out, I guess what I mean more specifically is like people who are just like consumed with the idea that they haven't found themselves and it's a problem. It's everybody's fault. It's like, so the first thing I'd say is like step out of yourself for a minute and realize that really we are all trying to figure ourselves out. It's not something that, oh, that guy seems like they've got a good job, they must be set. Or that guy's got a hot wife, he must be set. Or, that guy's got a hit record, he must be set. I mean, come on. Like, we know that's not the case. And so, number one, to just step out of that and realize that it is okay to be in progress. Like that's part of getting there is just admitting that it's a process getting there, right? I'm a pretty happy person. I'm not happy all the time. I'm certainly not happy with everything about my life, but I don't feel like I'm grossly lacking in some one particular thing that if I had it together, then I'd be set. I have a little more perspective than that. So I think that's a good first step. Secondly, I think that it's important to realize that you're not going to that you can't lean on any one thing in total.
Can you
And
clarify that? Can you tell us more about that?
yeah. So now I don't know. You may push back on this because you're a man of faith more so than I am, but you can't wait around for the perfect job to make you happy. You can't wait for the perfect person to marry. You can't wait for the perfect sign from God to be happy. You can't wait for the perfect accomplishment to be happy. Like, there's no one thing. When you get married, you cannot expect everything from that person. You are a person, they're a person, and you're connected and you're partners and you love each other, but you have to have your own lives too. You cannot depend on that one person to provide all your happiness. You cannot make every one of their hobbies your hobbies, right? You cannot equate your job with happiness. If I have a really bad day with my students and I feel awful, I have to stop myself and say, you're not an awful teacher, you just had a bad day. If I do a recording session and it comes out and it gets released and it sounds terrible, or I feel like it's not what I want it to play, I can't beat myself up because I'm a terrible musician. You know, like you cannot hang all of your self-worth on that. And I think that just those two examples, you know, you look at what's on TV, what's in the movies, what celebrities do. Every movie's like, oh, I was miserable till I found that one person, and then that person fixed me, and now I'm great. It's like that's not the way it works. You know, like marriage is hard. It's a journey. You support each other, but you have to bring a lot to it yourself, and you have to also maintain your strength yourself. Any like movie about the music industry, when it's like, oh, we had that one hit and we made it, it's like great. That's great, but that doesn't make, one hit a career of satisfaction. Does not make. And I'm not a deeply religious person, but I feel like if you're just waiting around for God to give you a sign, that's also not a real commitment to faith. Like, commitment to faith and religion is a continued effort to do the right thing, be the right person, to help others, to live by a certain set of standards, and to know that you're going to fail and miss and be willing to get back on the horse. So that's sort of what I mean by, like, you can't hang everything on one thing. You have to be aware that life is a combination of experiences and parts and powers, and that you've got to like traffic in all of those things if you want to feel whole and feel like yourself and feel like you have something to offer.
You use the word satisfaction. What gives you the most satisfaction?
Um,
Because if it's
be,
not this thing, right? If it's not
right,
like, oh, as as soon as I then, but
right,
I don't think you're also not saying like don't bother being satisfied, right?
right. No, not at all.
So what is the
Um, I think for me, I have this idea of doing good work. Like, and not to be too cheesy, but to go back to like middle school, right? When I was talking about my parents, like, my parents really did a good job of instilling this idea in me that if you do good work, like that's achievement. You do good work. It doesn't mean that you get everything right. It doesn't mean that you ace your SATs. It doesn't mean you get into your top choice of college. It doesn't mean that you're the number one singles player on the tennis team. Like, all those things would be great. It doesn't mean that you get every solo in the orchestra or whatever, but you keep doing the work. Like, do good work, be honest, be proud of yourself, and that work will speak for itself and make you happy and make you satisfied. So, like lately, I do a lot of work without getting into specifics. I do a lot of work that I feel like sometimes no one notices. Like I'm doing, and like I have a social media presence or whatever, and sometimes like I'll do something or I'll make something, and I'll just go on and check, and it's like 9 views, like 3 likes. And then there's like a video of a cat pooping into a cup, and it's got 30,000 views and 400 million subscribers. I'm like, what? It's, and I'm exaggerating, but like without getting specifics, you get the
no,
idea.
no,
Like,
you make
so there are
like
times where I just think like,
yeah.
huh, like I'm working on this. I'm really working hard on this stuff, and I'm trying to like get it out there, and it's like I feel like, oh, is anybody even, whatever. um and then I stop myself, and on my good days I stop myself and I say, you know what, you're doing good work. Like, would this be great if it had a gazillion views? Yes. Would it be great if like you were being paid a ton of money to do this work? Yes. Would it be great if like everyone was talking about it? Yes. Are all of those things like critical? No. The important thing is you're doing good work. Like, you're not making videos of cats pooping into buckets. Like, no offense to anyone who thinks that's, a hobby. I mean, whatever. But, like, if I work on something, if I give a good class, I do a good lesson, if I have an experience where a couple of the kids are like, they just have that gleam in their eye. I mean, this sounds so cheesy, but it's like, when they're just like, they really got it, they appreciated it. When something happens, and I'll learn like later on that there was more to the story, like so and so was really having a tough time with this, and it was really great that they participated. When I make or record something, and then someone like sort of like that I wouldn't expect is like, hey, that sounded great. Like I heard that, like so and so played that for me, and it was great. I was like, you know, even and this doesn't apply to everybody, but as a parent, I have a young kid, and like just having a day where like we do the day, and I can tell like we get towards the end of the day, and he's kind of, you know, cleaned off and teeth brushed, and he's kind of like getting ready for bed, and I can tell that he's just like tired and happy, and I feel very satisfied. I feel like I dadded today. Like I got my dad in today, and then I feel kind of connected to like, and this is another thing too, is that it helps me feel that connection. Like when I make something and no one cares, but like one person mentioned it, I'm like, you know what? I can add that to the list of 100 gazillion pieces of music that people made that no one cared about, that no one gave any credit to. It's like, yeah, that was a good one, and it's in there. Or like the gazillion moments that teachers all over the world dedicate themselves to help their students in conditions that are much more difficult than mine, and they make a little difference and no one noticed. It's like, yeah, like that was good. I did a good job today. I know I did the right thing. I don't know if anyone noticed. It doesn't matter. Like I did the good work. I feel good. And I think feeling connected to others in that spectrum of experience, it's like you're getting out of your teenage self. You're getting out of your bubble. It's like I did something, and maybe it wasn't a huge whatever, but I know it was good work, and that's what we're all trying to do. And so it's less about me and like, oh God, does my shirt look okay? It's more about like, yeah, like put that one in the books. That was a good day. I did it. I think that having an awareness of the world outside you and the world before and after you helps to feel less, helps me to feel fuller, because I'm not just like judging everything on like, okay, 1 to 100, how did I do today? It's like 1 to 100, like I did some work that, it's like what people have been doing for generations. And there's always someone that has it harder than you. And there's always someone that has it easier than you. So it's like not worth getting too caught up in that stuff. Like you got to just go from where you are. I'll give one more example, and this is not, I didn't make this up. Somebody explained this to me. I forget who or where I read it, but it was like, somebody was saying like, oh man, I dropped my cell phone in the toilet, and I was so pissed off, and I was like, God, I just bought that. And then I stopped and I realized, look at me complaining about my first world problems. And so the person was saying, here's a way to deal with that. You think micro and macro. So it's like in your micro world, that's super aggravating. An iPhone is expensive. Presumably you worked at your job to afford it. It's a tool. It sucks that you dropped it, and now you have to go buy another one, and it's frustrating. And it's okay to be frustrated and to be like, oh my God, this is the worst day. It's okay to have that feeling. But then at a certain point, like you put that grieving away, it's like, all right, well, whatever, it's a couple $100, like I'm just gonna have to re-fork over. You put that aside and look at the macro of like, the world is on fire, children are dying of preventable diseases, there's a wealth gap. Like there are bigger problems that deserve my respect and attention. And then you spend a little time like either addressing those issues, like you go online and you donate, or you go to your nonprofit, or you whatever it is, or at least just sort of sit and be thankful for what you have and realize that you're not the only one, and like work in the real world. I think it's okay to have both of those things. It's okay to be upset about, it's like if you were a starving child somewhere, you wouldn't care about an iPhone. But you're not a starving child, so an iPhone is a big deal, and it's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to make that your whole reality. So you have to travel between your micro and be aware of the macro. And I think if we can all do that, we would be a lot more satisfied and more aware of our privilege and of our good luck and of the work that we have to do, not just wrapped up on tiny details and missing the bigger picture.
I love it. I actually had
I'm
like,
so good at this. I'm not. You should ask me another question.
yeah,
I'm amazed.
I think
Are
everybody
people
else
writing this down?
no, no, I'm going to cancel everybody else and I'm just going to talk to you every day.
I think I maybe there should be a transcript. This is amazing pearls of wisdom that I'm giving. How much are you paying me for this? What is it? When is the check coming?
I'm paying you with my gratitude.
I'll take it. Yeah, they're good questions. It's hard. We're all working on it, you know. And
And actually, I had like several follow-up questions that you actually answered. Like when you were talking, I was like, okay, but then how about, and then you got
mm,
into it. So like the flow and the train of thought, I really, was right there with you in terms of,
cool.
okay, like, these are the things that are out of your control. These are the things that are in your control. Even some of the things that are in your control, like you're not going to do them as well as you
Hmm.
wish you did. And I think the point about just doing the best that you can, and for me, the connection is the most important thing, and that's part of the reason I'm doing this. Is all of the people that I'm talking to are people that I feel super connected to and super grateful that they kind of got me to this point where, like, you in like middle school and high school and other people in college and other people after that, that I don't know where I would have been without you guys and without like somebody saying like, hey, like there's something good.
Yeah, yeah,
There's some reason for us to say like, I don't hate everybody and everything, I just hate most things and most people. Like
right,
Jesse, I love Jesse. Like at
right.
least I can go to school and I know if I see Jesse, it's going to be like, oh, okay, good. So I'm grateful for your wisdom both then and now.
You know,
um
it's someone I heard. I was doing a orientation for a camp thing, a group that an organization that I work for that takes students out on trips, like takes them around the world and sort of like guides them and supervises and instructs and so this is like an orientation. This is actually like a really cool organization, and someone said this thing that it sounds so hippy dippy, but it really makes a lot of sense and it stuck with me. And they said, you have to imagine that if someone's life, imagine that someone's life, the trajectory of their life is like an arrow, right? And it's a very long path. It's like 100-year path. So, if you nudge someone even a fraction of a degree over the course of their lifetime, the change in the trajectory is massive.
right.
And we are all sort of a sum total of all of the forces that have acted on our trajectory. And, it's like looking back, it's impossible, unless you're in like a Gwyneth Paltrow movie, like to track back all of the. Shout out to Gwyneth. Hey, Gwyneth.
Yeah, she's
Um,
watching this for sure.
I'm sure I'm available, Um, I'm not romantically. I mean, like available
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody
for
took it away, don't worry.
for any kind of endorsement. Although this ring comes off, so hey, you can edit that out. I
No
love
editing. It's
I love my
unedited.
wife. I love my wife. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh yeah, it's like it seems like silly to track back the little things that changed you, but that's the reality is that these things change you, and the same as you. Like I can think back on like a good handful of moments that in the life of the person who was administering that nudge probably that didn't give them a second's, they didn't even think about it, but were very impactful on me. And so like you need to those things are important. You need to model the right behavior, and I think trying to do good work and to look at yourself as part of a connection to other people is a good place to start, because none of us have the answers and none of us have the control, but you can control, what you try to put out there in the world, and you can also surround yourself as much as possible with people that share similar value systems. And I think that it's like you can collectively kind of try to keep your nudges all in a good on a good nudge plan of
I love it.
nudgery.
I
Yeah,
love it.
copyright. Gwyneth Paltrow can't have that.
No,
The
no,
plan of
it
nudgery.
can
No,
be
that's copyrighted.
proprietary
Proprietary. Yeah,
Neuman enterprises. No, no,
absolutely.
no,
Nudge,
nudge control.
nudge control.
So, any last thoughts, my friend, before we sign off?
Do you have any tips for me in terms of growing my mustache out? Is there any kind of
Can you show them? Can you lean a little bit? Because you had a little bit of
it's so pathetic. It's just this is it. There's you can't it doesn't even register the resolution on my webcam doesn't even maybe you can fix it in post. You could pencil
maybe,
it
yeah.
in.
I'll just do like a cartoon mustache on your
I
face.
know, but I was shaving this morning and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna just it's today's the day. It's now or never. Today's the
Do it.
day. Um, what is your?
You have a whole month to grow it out.
I know. Maybe I'll work on it. I'll work on it. Actually, I have to say that when I mentioned to my wife, I said, you remember Mina, right? I'm doing a call with him tomorrow. He's doing a web series and we're gonna talk and I said it's for Movember and she just stopped, but she just goes, please don't grow a mustache. Do that. That was her comment. That was her
I'm
nudge.
right. I'm the constant heel for all wives everywhere, so including my own. So good.
What is your goal at the end of this series? What are you hoping to have
We've
provided?
achieved it. We've achieved it. Like I enjoyed this conversation, and I think if someone happens to watch this and they benefit from your wisdom, great. If it's just me, that's good enough.
Oh man, I love it. Good to see
So
you,
thank you,
dude.
Jesse.
Yeah,
Uh,
man. Great to see
and
you.
thank you for listening. Take care,
A-
guys.
Absolutely.